Number 4, Proclamations and Broadsides.
Hear ye, hear ye. Whereas it is in the power of His Majesty's generals and of the forces under their command entirely to destroy all those who have risen in rebellion against their sovereign and his laws. Yet it is nevertheless the wish of government that those persons who, by traitorous machinations, have been seduced, or by acts of intimidation have been forced from their allegiance, should be received into His Majesty's peace and pardon.
You're listening to a proclamation that was issued in Dublin in June 1798 by the King of England's forces just weeks after the 1798 rebellion. It's a proclamation offering terms for any rebels who would surrender.
Does hereby invite all persons who may now be assembled in any part of the said county against His Majesty's peace to surrender themselves and their arms, and to desert the leaders who have seduced them. And for the acceptance of such surrender and submission, the space of 14 days from the date hereof is allowed.
Imagine what it must have been like to stand in your marketplace and hear that being read out. In the days before newspapers were common, proclamations like this were how official notices were broadcast to the public. They would be posted in public places like the city gates, and because many people could not read, they would be read out to the crowd, maybe by a town crier. The proclamations were printed on a large sheet of paper, and so they're also called broadsides, like the word broadsheet that we still use for some larger newspapers. Proclamations were used from the 1500s on, both by the authorities and by the opposition parties, by people campaigning for reform or even revolution, and often to circulate seditious ballads. So in Ireland, broadsides could be a rebellious call to arms, or in our example, a warning to citizens to lay down their arms. The Academy Library has over 600 broadsides, and this display shows just a few of them. It's amazing so many of them have survived, because although they were common in their day, they're now rare, and some of them are the only surviving copy we have. The Academy's broadsides were collected by two people, Eleanor Nacht and Charles Halliday. Eleanor Nacht was born in 1886, and she was an authority on Old Irish and especially bardic poetry. She began the Dictionary of Old Irish, a project that eventually took 100 years to complete, but it's now available online. Nacht was also one of the first 4 women elected to the Academy in 1949. Our second collector, Charles Halliday, was born in 1789. He was a larger-than-life Dublin character, a self-taught, prosperous merchant who ran a successful timber business. He was active in the city's institutions, becoming a director of the Dublin Port Authority and a member of the Royal Irish Academy, and he was renowned for his charitable works. But Charles Halliday had 2 passions. The first was reading, and he would get up in the dead of night to read for hours. And his second passion was collecting pamphlets. And every day hawkers would besiege him to buy their pamphlets and proclamations. And Halliday usually bought everything. And if you look up now at the gallery, all those boxes and bound volumes contain the pamphlets he collected. There are over 35,000 items in the collection in all. Halliday had to build a large library just to store them, and after he died in 1866, his widow gave everything to the Academy. The oldest item is from 1578, and all told, the collection spans nearly 300 years. Many of the items are unique because they were never intended to last. The Academy's librarian Siobhan Fitzpatrick says it's the finest collection of pamphlets relating to Ireland.
Well, every major event in Irish history is recorded here. Everything from rebellions, religious debates, to growing flax and regulating sedan chairs in Dublin. Accounts of Robert Emmet's trial and other trials, reports of do-gooder societies in the 19th century, famine relief, all of that, all human life is there. And there are eyewitness accounts of events. So the collection is just wonderfully rich and an important resource for anyone studying Irish history.
Take a few minutes to read some of the proclamations here. Then our next story is the man who mapped all of Ireland in the 1800s. His is the small portrait on the wall beside the door into the meeting room.